Hello everyone, welcome along to the second episode of F1Talk, our testing review. Obviously we finally had 3 days of testing, but before we get started, over the weekend we obviously had the very sad news of an F1 legend and icon, Murray Walker, sadly passed away at the age of 97. A man whose voice defined F1, who made the sport exciting a bit before our time, but for when we watch previous races of old. Obviously, the one thing that stands out is obviously his voice. So as we get started, just before we get started, obviously wondered if any of you guys had any thoughts, wanted to pay your tributes to Murray Walker.
He's obviously he's the voice of F1. For me personally, I think he's the most iconic voice in all of sport. He brought us some amazing moments in Formula One, and no matter how many commentators there are in the world, I always think that Murray will be the man that I remember the most for in the period of Formula One. That obviously Crofty does a pretty good job, and I do love Crofty, but yeah, Murray, you can't think about Formula One without Murray, and yeah, he'll be missed, but I feel that we should be celebrating how good he was as a commentator, the iconic moments that he brought us. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, one of the most iconic commentators, not only F1, but commentators as a whole in history. His voice, how he said it, like he's pretty much like Crofty, isn't he? But with a better voice.
For sure.
I think also
Sad to see him go.
his humor as well. I think him getting things wrong, and he really, for me, was always just so transparent. He's not just your average commentator. He would get things wrong. He would make things funny. He would talk about random things and get drivers wrong. It's kind of like Crofty does. So yeah, it's obviously sad to see.
It was like it was like so genuine.
Yeah,
Like he didn't play this, like he didn't have this persona on when he was commentating.
absolutely.
It was just him.
Yeah.
So
But
Yeah.
shame that he's passed away, but I guess like Luke said, we've got to celebrate for what he's done.
Yeah,
He's
I mean, he
an
lived a good
icon
life.
of F1.
and he will always, love Formula One, and I'm sure that he's watching everybody, and I'm sure he'll watch this season, which could be the most record-breaking season of them all, with the 8th title on the line. So I'm sure that he'll be watching.
Yeah, and as you guys say, I'm sure,
Yeah.
obviously he'll be remembered. His F1 legacy will live on, and I'm sure we'll see more tributes paid throughout the season as it goes on. But as we get into testing, just before we start, if you guys do have any questions that you would like to ask us, you can type in !Discord in the chat. Join our Discord. In there is a channel where you can ask us any questions. At the end of the stream, we'll get to them and we'll answer as many of them as we possibly can. Hopefully all of them. But time dependent, obviously, we'll see how many we get through. But obviously, as we say, we had 3 days of testing. Finally, we saw the cars out on track for the first time. Some looked better than others, but we'll be running through each team and commenting on who we thought looked good, who we thought didn't look so good, and rounding up testing as a whole. So obviously, where should we start other than, of course, Mercedes? We'll start from the top. Didn't look very comfortable throughout the 3 days for me personally. I thought they looked like they struggled a little bit. Coming at the end, they obviously recorded the least amount of laps out of all the teams, 304 laps in total. So for me, they struggled. The car didn't look like it was balanced, didn't look like it was quite grounded. Obviously, you could say the conditions were very tricky out there, with the wind and the sandstorm, especially on day one in the afternoon. But, a gearbox problem as well didn't help them, I don't think. But yeah, for me, Mercedes, I thought struggled.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. Naturally, being a Mercedes fan, the one thing that they're used to is they're used for is sandbagging. I think that definitely played a part in it. I think there was some data that came out that said they were 2.7 seconds off the pace of their lap time in Bahrain last year. I don't think that's the case. They definitely weren't, using full power. But the one thing that people look for in testing is reliability. it's not about lap times. We're not going to be seeing world record laps. We're not going to be seeing engine modes turned up to the full. We never know who's running what. They could be running 60 kilos of fuel and Red Bull could be running 20. You never know. But it wasn't smooth. A lot of people, I think, personally, from my outset, I think a lot of people are overreacting to the situation. But you can't be blinded by the fact that they got such little running in. And when they did run in, it was tricky. I think the conditions played a part. I mean, over the years, the Mercedes has always had a looser rear end. It's always been the way that they've designed their cars. And in windy conditions, they do struggle. But I've never seen, especially Lewis. I think Valtteri sort of came back to, sort of being comfortable with the car. But with Lewis, when was the last time any of us have seen Lewis drop it? You haven't. I think, the second one, I think, was just poor tyre warm-up, maybe because they don't have DAS. And the first one was just an error with the fact that there was a tailwind coming out of, I think it was like turn 14. But it didn't look, hooked up. It didn't look grippy. It only really started to look like the car that we're used to seeing at the end. But, they have the best team. They have the best driver, and I believe they'll get it sorted. But it wasn't the most optimal test that they've ever done.
Well, personally for me, like you said, they've done the least lap. But realistically, are they sandbagging? That's we don't know. They could just be playing it, and come practice and qualifying in Bahrain in a couple of weeks' time, they could top it as they've done for the past seasons.
I guess that's the thing with testing, right? Like, you're reading between the lines, but obviously you have to remember it is just testing, and obviously teams have previously sandbagged in the past, so you're not really too sure whether teams are sandbagging or not. But as I said, for me personally, the Mercedes didn't look that comfortable. I thought the rear end was way out of place, and it didn't look like if you had to pick a car there, you'd pick the Mercedes out of all of them. Previous years in testing, the Mercedes has always looked very well grounded. That would be the car you wanna be in. It might not have ever been the fastest in testing. Obviously, again, you can't really pay too much attention to the times. But this year especially, I wouldn't have said that Mercedes was the car someone would want to jump in at this moment in time.
Yeah.
I would agree. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. But the thing is, what you're saying, like, they could be sandbagging, but if they are sandbagging, then would you still expect them to see them spin and everything? Probably not. So
No.
it's questionable.
I would agree with that point, definitely. But the only thing that for me personally is this isn't the first time this has happened. If you know what I mean. In 2019, the W10. I don't know if any of you remember the 2019 test, but they had a regulation change on the front wing. And that was difficult to come to grips with. And Lewis was saying that he was not strong in the car. And I just feel that it's either Mercedes sandbagging or there is a problem and they don't really want to sort of, because I think they came out and said that they have found no data in their aero, which suggests that there's problems. So maybe it was wind, maybe it was they couldn't find the setup. But what we can know is that, no, of course they're favourites. They're 7-time world champions. Lewis is a 7-time world champion. You wouldn't write them off, right? But if I'm Red Bull, I'm looking at them and going, we might not be as quick as them, but we are closer. And if Max put it on pole in 2 weeks' time and won from pole, would I be shocked? No, not at all. So
I think there's no doubt the Mercedes this year has looked a lot less stable than the other years. Even with the windy conditions, the sandstorm, look at all the other cars. I mean, I don't think I saw the Red Bull spin like that Mercedes has, just dropping it like that. I mean, Verstappen lost it in testing 1, I believe. He won.
Yeah, he did.
But even if they are sandbagging or whatever they're doing, it still looks like a really uncomfortable car to drive. And one that loose at the rear especially.
Well, I think we expect come the first race of the season as well that Mercedes car won't be that car, for example, that will be racing. They'll probably bring a few upgrades, probably make a few changes to try and help it become balanced. So you can't, I don't think we can come out and say that Mercedes will be like that in 2 weeks' time. But for sure, I say personally that they didn't look that comfortable out there, and the 3 days, I don't think went as planned as they would have liked or how they've planned for it to go.
Yeah, like that car was so unstable, and I feel like if it was definitely more stable, they would have got more laps in. That's just my thoughts.
Go on.
Yeah, go on.
You go
ahead. I just feel that they were, I don't know, because for me personally, I think the only reason that those lap times weren't as big as everybody else is because of Valtteri missing that first day. I think if you put Valtteri doing a full program, then they'd probably have 370 near 400, 500 laps. But they got through what they wanted to do. They were saying that Friday was a setback, and I think they recovered really well because they got through their programs. I don't think it's necessarily about how many laps you do. It's about whether those laps mean anything. Aston Martin did so many laps. I mean, they did so many laps. More than Mercedes. I think they did like 10 or 15 more laps, which is a lot. But how many of those are actually representative of what we are going to put into data? The same way that on the Friday afternoon session, the conditions were just ridiculous. There was a sandstorm. The car was all over the place. Every car was struggling. It looked like it was wet. I mean, at one point we were saying, why don't they go on intermediates? Because it was just ridiculous.
Yeah, they were. They did mention it. Yeah.
And I think that testing should always be taken with a pinch of salt, right? Because you don't know what's going on. You don't know who's running fuel, whatever. But going off of every other test I've seen Mercedes do, this definitely looks like the one where they are more on the back foot. If they can bring it back and they can, ultimately, I think Bahrain won't be where we find out. I think it will be probably when we start getting deeper into the season where points matter. We'll see. But yeah, I think personally, they've got a lot to do over the next 10 days.
Cool. So what are your thoughts on Red Bull then? Next on the scene. So Red Bull, they seemed very strong. Perez was strong out there. He found his ways and got around it. Obviously, they had that issue with the engine cover in when was it? Saturday? Sunday?
Day two.
Sunday. Was it not?
No, Verstappen was in the car all day Sunday, I think.
No,
was
they
he
shared
not?
it Sunday.
I think they shared. It was later on though. Was Verstappen in the morning? I can't remember.
Verstappen was on Friday. Then on Saturday was.
I think it might have been Saturday's evening session.
Well, yeah. Well, whenever it was.
Yeah.
Whenever they had that engine cover issue, but that was the really only issue for Perez. Obviously, Max had the spin, but otherwise they were pretty strong.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely agree. I think they're not. I wouldn't say that they're the outright favourites because it's difficult to sort of write off Mercedes early. But if I'm, Red Bull, I'm thinking to myself, we might push this year. It'll be in 2 weeks' time, in a couple of days, in 11 days' time, when we find out how close everybody is, for sure.
I mean, for me, Red Bull, that was by far their strongest testing that they've had in, a few years at least. I think, for me, I think were the strongest team. Yes, Perez had the engine cover issue, but that didn't really hold him back for too long in the garage. I thought that car looked good. I thought it was well planted. In previous years, Verstappen and Albon have seemed to struggle with it straight off the start. But I thought Verstappen especially really had that car going towards the end. And Perez as well, I think by the end, had a good grip to that car. He had plenty of running in the car. Red Bull completing 369 laps across the whole weekend. In fairness, compared to other teams, they were 7th out of all the teams in terms of their laps. But obviously, again, you can't read much into the times, but they were consistently up there. Not again as you can read too much in times, but and in the car that I would pick out of testing to probably go and really challenge Mercedes at that, it would be the Red Bull. I think they're probably more confident now than they were previously. Obviously, we were all talking last season when they won Abu Dhabi. You know, can they carry this form into this season? And they definitely look like they have after testing. I thought they looked like a really, really good team, and they've got a really good car that, you know, could potentially challenge Mercedes. And if there's a year for them to challenge, it's definitely this year. With you know, new regulations come in next year. The regulation changes this year have obviously been designed to impact Mercedes more than anyone. Obviously, they impact everyone in a way because obviously the floor has been cut down. But Mercedes, really, that's where they gained a lot of their downforce from, and really the car helped them there. So, yeah, for me, Red Bull, I think, were probably the strongest team there, with a couple close behind who we'll obviously be talking about later on. But yeah, Red Bull for me had a very good testing.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I mean, Matt, I know that when we were talking about our predictions last week, you were very much sort of open with the fact that you think that McLaren could potentially not be as quick as maybe as they have been last year. Obviously, they had a really good season last year. Do you think the fact that Aston Martin, who for me are the closest to McLaren, do you think the fact that Aston Martin, and especially Seb, not getting that run time that he probably needed in that car, do you think that will swing in the favour of the fact that Daniel looked really complete in the car? And do you think that Aston Martin are not really in a fight with McLaren, but maybe the Alfa Tauris and the Ferraris? And
I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, yeah, Ricciardo looked good in the car. So did Norris in the McLaren car. But you never know, especially with someone like Sebastian Vettel, who's a 4-time world champion. You know, he has that experience. He knows how to set up a car, how to handle it. He has that knowledge of the car probably from before. So it's all about the practical, you know, the practical side of it to try and get that in. But I think it's too early to write off Aston Martin challenging for P3.
Yeah.
Sure. But McLaren definitely did look good in their car, especially with that new diffuser.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're talking about McLaren, for me personally, me personally, if we're talking about McLaren, I think again they had a very strong testing. Obviously, they were the only team to change engine manufacturers over the winter, and they weren't, I don't think, even expecting to do that this year after the new regs. So, you know, they were expecting to design a car with the new regulations in mind, and that obviously got pushed back by a year. So, you know, to get the new engine in there, to have no issues across the whole weekend. Well, obviously, we don't know any major issues, but obviously with Merc having the gearbox issue, Aston Martin having the same issue, and then a problem with their turbo as well. For McLaren to, you know, come out, they did 327 laps, which was 8th overall. So again, not many laps, but again, McLaren aren't really a team I ever find in testing come out and, you know, are the team that a lot of people talk about. They always seem to do their own thing, mind their own business, just go around, test out their car. Yeah, and I thought Ricciardo looked very comfortable in that car, practically from the off. He looked like he was very much at home, looked like he could really get to grips with it. You know, finished, I think, top on the first day of the morning session when he was in the car, straight off the bat. So, you know, he looked really comfortable. And yeah, I thought McLaren looked really good and looked like they might be slightly closer to Red Bull, slightly closer to Mercedes, which is obviously their ultimate goal for this season. Obviously, they want to close that gap a bit more. Whether they're going to challenge, who knows? Obviously, again, we just said about Mercedes struggling a little bit, but we expect them to be at the top come the first race of the season. And obviously, Red Bull look very strong. So how close they are, we don't know. But they definitely, after testing, looked like, you know, they could potentially have made a step closer with the Merc engine in the back.
Well, I think McLaren's main focus was with testing was to get Daniel used to the car and seeing what he could do with it, and he can drive that car, which is a very good sign for McLaren. Norris handled it well as well, so it's hopeful for McLaren this year.
But
They
I
can be
think as
closer.
well, I think a team that I was definitely surprised with was Alpha Tauri. I know it's only testing, and I know that everything's got to be sort of taken into proportion and with a pinch of salt, and you can't really look at the times. But for me, after last night's session, I think Yuki looks a lot more comfortable than I thought he would be. Obviously, as a rookie in F2, and that obviously means that he will be coming up. It's a new formula. It's a faster car. It's more buttons and things. But he looked good. He looked really good. I mean, he did a cool down lap and managed to go 3/10 quicker on tyres that were probably a bit hot. So I think that Alpha Tauri are definitely closer to the front four than the third and fourth than we
Hmm.
expect them to. I definitely expect them to be. And as well, Alpine looked good as well. I think Alonso, I'm not really Alonso's biggest fan, but he came back and looked really good. And it's what I can gather from this testing, if anything, is that the front two are the front two, what order they'll be in, we'll find out in 10 days' time. But this midfield, it could be anybody. It could be literally anybody's. So, Matty, as you're a McLaren fan, do you think that obviously it is testing, so we don't know the race pace of the car, we don't know the one lap pace fully. Do you think that if McLaren don't have made the steps forward to challenge with this the front two that they can do, and if not, do you think that maybe there is a risk of them getting caught up by the other teams because the other teams behind them look stronger than last year?
Oh, I mean, definitely, right? Like, you know, McLaren, as I said, I thought look like they've made steps forward. However, I also agree with you. I think, if they haven't maybe made them steps forward as much as they hoped, they're probably looking over their shoulders a little bit at the teams behind, Aston Martin and now Alfa Tauri. I thought Alfa Tauri were the biggest surprise of testing for me. I thought, from day one they looked really good. Yuki being a rookie looked like he got to grips with that car really well. Gasly looked like again he was comfortable carrying on his form from sort of last season. I thought last season he had a really good season. Sort of dropped away at the end a little bit, but obviously he had that win in Monza. So I thought he had a really good season, and that car looks like it's really, really a really nice car. Sonoda looks really fast in it, and obviously you mentioned Aston Martin there. I thought they again were another strugglers. I put them down with Mercedes in terms of sort of how testing went overall. Obviously, I thought the car looked better when it was out on track. It was a fact. It was when it was out on track. It never seemed to really sort of was out on track. They obviously had some issues across different days. I think the biggest loser out of all of the testing was Sebastian Vettel. Being new to the team, being new to the car, having a different engine manufacturer in the back of that car and stuff. I thought he was the biggest loser out of everyone. And yeah, I didn't really sort of, make much of Aston Martin. They never really sort of were up there at all. And obviously the issues obviously might have helped them. But I thought, they were sort of did their own thing. I mean, they still pumped in more laps than Mercedes did, 314 laps. So they did do their laps. They did get in a lot of laps considering they had, I think it was 2-3 issues across the whole testing, and I think we're the team with the most issues anyway. So yeah, for me, McLaren will definitely be looking over their shoulders. I think AlphaTauri are up there; they're closer with the Honda engine in the back. I think the Honda engine looks really good this year again. So yeah, I would agree that McLaren, if they haven't made them steps forward, will be looking over their shoulders. A little bit worried about the teams behind them, but yeah, we can't really tell until the first qualifying in 10 days' time, as you say.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, one thing that was definitely stood out to all the commentators and everything was the rake on the Alpha Tauri. They ran such a
the super high rake, yes.
Compared to any other team, even compared to Red Bull, that normally run a high rake.
Even as well, the Red Bull car ran a pretty high rake as well. But I think we won't know whether these things affect these cars unless in 10 days' time. And even in 10 days' time, like for me personally, you won't see how good these cars are and how, built they are until maybe Portimao, when you're looking nearer the middle of the season, is when start to see, um, you'll start to see whether these things affect them. Because obviously they build up data.
Hmm.
But maybe the high rake is the thing. Maybe it is,
Yeah.
everybody has to bend the regulations to find speed and to find downforce. Is it the McLaren diffuser? Is it the Ferrari nose? Is it the Mercedes wavy floor?
The Viennetta floor, as they called it on Sky
Yeah,
Sports
the
Yeah,
F1.
the
The
Viennetta
Viennetta
floor.
floor,
Yeah.
I really like that one. I really like that. Yeah, we'll call it the Viennetta floor with the like you say, like the
I think
waves.
that'll be mentioned. I think that'll be mentioned a lot throughout the season.
yeah, for sure.
The Viennetta.
But I guess we won't know if these things work. And to be honest, we have no idea what Mercedes have, Red Bull, but specifically Mercedes have spent in their tokens. I know that James Allison have gone on about the new horsepower in the power unit. Um, you know, I think Mercedes have a lot more to show. I think other teams, obviously, they have not shown their full potential, but I think that W12 could be like it could just be really, really fast. We will know in qualifying in 10 days, but I think Mercedes are covering. Maybe it is sandbagging, but I think Mercedes have so much that they have to show, which is hopefully what we will see in a few days' time.
Mm.
Matt, I'd just like to get your thoughts quickly. Sorry on Alpha Tauri again. As I said, they were my biggest surprises. So I'd like to get everyone's sort of opinions on that. So what were your sort of opinions on Alpha Tauri, and then take us into sort of Alpine and how you thought Alpine got on. Obviously, a team that changed name over the winter. How do you think they got on? But obviously Alpha Tauri first.
Yeah, I don't think AlphaTauri did too bad. I mean, they were trading fastest lap time, sure, but how meaningful that is, we won't know because we don't know how much fuel they're running. We don't know the engine modes, all of that stuff. But the car looks good. Yuki looks good. Pierre looks good in it. How much the flaws affected their car is questionable. I'm not too sure, really. I mean, they do run an extremely high rake. I'm fairly certain it's the highest rake of all teams, even higher than Red Bull's. But yeah, it's hard to judge any team at the moment, but they certainly did look pretty comfortable, pretty strong in that car. And then for Alpine's pretty much the same, really. I mean, Ocon and Alonso both look comfortable in the car. I'm quite surprised by their airbox and how wide it is.
Yeah.
They
I got picked up with quite a lot.
But I'm not. I mean, maybe there's some sort of reason behind it. What that is, I doubt we'll ever know. But yeah, car looks good. Looks like an
Might
improvement.
work, it might not.
I think that's the whole thing at the moment with testing is usually because of the 6 days that you get, everybody sort of, runs such long runs. They run, 7, 6-7 days sometimes. So cars get grippier and they get better over the days. But with 3 days, you have no idea at all. Yes, there were qualifying runs, but were they qualifying runs on high fuel? Were there qualifying runs with less power? I know that something that we mentioned was that Lewis was in 7th gear and Verstappen and everyone else was going into 8th gear. That shows that there's less power in the Mercedes. I think that with the small regulation tweaks, but the tweaks that they've had to make to the car are significant. Like we said, with the diffusers, the air rakes, the flaws. I think that teams are just not giving anything away, and I think that is why there is just this talk about where is everybody, where are McLaren, where are Red Bull. I think this has been definitely the most speculation that I've seen as a Formula One fan since the turbo hybrid, because no one knows. You don't know where any of the cars are. Usually, there's a pretty good insight, but no one knows. No one knows, and that's what makes it so exciting.
Yeah, I mean, coming back onto Alpine now for myself, just thought I'd mention quickly as well, when, just as we move on from AlphaTauri, they actually did 422 laps, which was actually joint first throughout the whole testing. So they, they pumped in the laps. They did, joint the most amount of laps, along with Alfa Romeo, who we'll get onto in a minute. But moving back to Alpine, I thought they looked quite strong. Obviously, again, they're sort of a team that we're not really too sure on. They're the only team now with the Renault engine in the back. It looked reliable. Obviously, they didn't have any issues across the weekend. I thought Alonso looked like he hadn't even left F1 when he got back into it. I know they were saying that on commentary as well. He looked like as soon as he jumped in that car, he hit every apex and looked like he hadn't left the sport really. I think the Ocon and Alonso battle will be interesting. Again, I thought Ocon looked quite good in that car. But where that car will be come the end of the season, who really knows? It's a bit different to all the other cars. As Matt said, the back of it looked quite beefy. Looked like they had quite a lot of bulk on the back of that car. So we'll have to wait and see. But I thought overall Alpine were pretty strong.
Well, one team that has some mixed opinions from they had a bad season last year. Ferrari, Carlos Sainz. He seemed a little bit iffy with the car on over testing.
Do you think we're seeing a trend with Red Bull in Ferrari now? Because the Charles looked, I think he looked relatively pleased with what he was. But do you think that second car is now like the Red Bull car? Because the attributes that Carlos was driving with were sort of the same as Seb last year. Understeer, spinning, not looking, most people around the fast right-hander, just at the end of Sector 2, would take it flat or a little lift. He was fully coming off his throttle pedal, which shows that there's not confidence, right? So do you think that car is sort of similar to Sebastian Vettel's one last year, and we'll see the same attributes? Because I think Carlos looked, out of all the new drivers, he looked a long way off the where I think Ferrari want them to be.
No,
Matt, you go first.
Okay, go ahead, Matt. You got something to say?
Okay, I'll go then. I don't think so. I mean, you have to imagine that Carlos has just come from the McLaren, which uses a completely different aero philosophy to the Ferrari. How that affects his driving style or plays into his driving style is to be seen. But I think you should have to give him time. Especially if that Ferrari, we know the Ferrari is, it doesn't have a very big error margin. Whereas if you compare it to something like Seb coming from the Ferrari to the Aston Martin is naturally a stable car. It looks like a stable car. And so I think the Ferrari being naturally unstable, having a very small margin of error, it's kind of hard to tell how Carlos will actually progress in it.
Yeah.
I would agree.
I think Ferrari's main goal is to just get back up into the constructors, back up to like 4-3.
Yeah, where we're.
I don't think they're gonna have the same situation as Red Bull, where one driver has the better car than the other. I don't think that's Ferrari's main objective. They just want to get points and be up there in the constructors. So I think for it to be fair, like, they're just gonna stick the same car for both. I just think Carlos Sainz just didn't like the handling. and he's going to get used to it, I think, or they're going to tweak it for the race in a couple of weeks' time.
Sainz for me, definitely. I'd probably agree. Out of probably the new drivers at new teams, he was probably down there. Obviously, you didn't see Vettel a lot, but out of everyone else, Sainz definitely looked like he struggled the most. But again, it's only testing. It's to be expected. He's obviously gone from what was a very good McLaren last year to, a worse Ferrari. Obviously, how fast it can go, we don't know. Obviously, they've changed their engine at the back. They've hopefully made it better, made it go a bit faster. But whether it's enough to push them up, I'm not sure. Obviously, in our predictions, I think we had them about, again, down the bottom end of the midfield. I think we had a few teams beating them again. And I think from that testing, it looked like it might end up that way, and that they might be in roughly the same position. But they put in 404 laps. So they were the third team. Obviously, Alfa Romeo and AlphaTauri did the joint most. So they did a lot of laps. So Sainz would have had a lot of good feel for that car. He will probably know what needs to be worked on, what can be improved. So I expect come the first qualifying him to be more comfortable in that car. But obviously it's all down to the speed of the car. How good is that engine in the back? Is it close to the Honda engine? We just won't know until the first qualifying of the season. But for sure, Sainz looked like he struggled a little bit, but Leclerc seemed to feel like the car was quite nice to him, and he just seemed to be going around doing the laps, doing the runs, doing the long runs. So yeah, I thought again, not really anything to sort of amaze me from Ferrari. They were sort of just doing their thing. So for me, that's sort of where I stand with Ferrari. But another team I'm interested in is Alfa Romeo. I think day one for me, Kimi didn't look like he had that car very at the point he wanted it. He was locking up a lot into turn 10, which we're used to seeing in Bahrain. But I thought overall the weekend there wasn't as many lockups as I thought there would be. However, I thought Kimi locked up quite a lot at turn 10 in the first day. But when Gio got in the car, Raikkonen on the third day, I thought the Alfa Romeo looked quite strong. I thought I think they've probably made a few gains this year. Again, whether or not it's enough, who knows? They're obviously running that Ferrari engine in the back as well. But joint most laps with the Alfa Romeo, I just thought they did their thing. Put in their program. And I was quite impressed with them. I thought they just sort of did their thing, and yeah, be interesting to know what you guys thought about Alfa Romeo.
I just think that they are running a higher engine mode or higher power output than the other teams.
They did that last season.
Yeah, and I think this is what I feel that testing was like. Was free practice. We always see it. Aston Martin, I think it's definitely apparent in Aston Martin. When was the last time, you saw Stroll and Perez, up the timesheets? You didn't in last season because that's not what they did. And I think for the smaller teams, I feel that they definitely put their engine a lot higher. Obviously it's just assumptions, so we won't ever know until we might not ever know. But I think that they definitely were using more power, which is what I suspect, which is why their lap times were so competitive. Well, their lap times were closer and a lot than Mercedes. And I think I have a suspect feeling that Alfa Romeo could be. I know that Martin Brundle was talking about it, that they could be better than their Ferrari car. Because in the long runs, Giovinazzi and Raikkonen, they were, tenth off Charles Leclerc. Whether obviously, engine modes, you don't know what fuel they're running, but I think they're in a good spot. How close they are to the other three, I think they're going to definitely be up there. I think their goal is to just beat Haas and Williams. I don't think there's going to be any real intention of making an indent in the midfield. But I think that what they've got, I think they look good. They look like they're strong. And I know Giovinazzi. That was interesting that Giovinazzi said that he wasn't happy with the car. So maybe that's something that they'll work on over the next few days that they have. But yeah, Kimi looked pretty decent in the fast runs. I think they'll be better than last year.
So are you saying that Alfa Romeo have improved from last year, or Ferrari got worse? Is that how you?
I think that they've improved. Definitely. I think that they've taken a good step forward in their development, and I think that will definitely show. In terms of Ferrari, we just don't know until qualifying. It can't be much worse than last year. It can't be much worse. Well, I mean,
No.
it could be much worse.
It could, yeah.
Be, with Williams and Haas, which is not going to happen. But whether they'll be where they are, where they want to be, I think an honest view for Ferrari would be to just try and get close to McLaren and Aston Martin to the point where they, like last year, where it was, tight. It would be anyone's game, anybody's P3. But they've had more wind tunnel time because of where they finished last year, and we shall see. But I don't think Ferrari will be where I think that Binotto is talking about them being. They might have straight line speed back, but
one thing's for sure is they can't have another season, not like last season, of course, but they can't risk Sainz having a car like Vettel was, being, in some races quite far away from from Leclerc, sorry. Vettel being, down the bottom end and Leclerc sometimes finishing, in a good position for what the Ferrari was. It looked like towards the end of the season, he had the Ferrari going well, but Vettel obviously, they might have just said, you're going this next year at the time anyway, so we're just not going to give you the car. But they definitely can't afford to do that with Sainz. Sainz probably, he wouldn't be happy with that at all anyway, being a new guy there. He'll want to help the team get back to where they were, just like he's done at McLaren. When he joined McLaren, they were obviously not in the best of places, and obviously the 2 years he's been there along with Lando Norris, they've, got better and better. So he's obviously going to try and do the same with Ferrari, and I don't think they can afford to give him a bad car. Ultimately, otherwise, again, they're going to end up, back down in 6th in the constructors and, struggling again and in the same position next year.
For sure. I would definitely agree.
I just want to jump back to Alfa Romeo. You said that they look like they've improved this season. So does this mean that bet to their 2019 form? Because they took a huge performance deficit in 2020. So
I think, yeah. I think they can get back to that kind of form, but I think it's going to be different for them. Obviously, in 2020 they took a huge deficit with that power. Obviously, the Ferrari engine wasn't very good. And I think if they have got it right and the way they look in testing, if they can take that kind of form and performance into the season, why wouldn't they have that kind of form that we saw in 2019? Why wouldn't they? Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to our final two teams. We've got Haas and Williams. Finished, Haas and Williams finished 9th and 10th last year. Haas, we know, going into this year, aren't really focusing on this year's car. So testing was obviously a bit of a just get the two rookie drivers used to the car, get them going around the laps, which they did 394 laps in total. I didn't think the car looked bad. I thought it did quite well. Obviously, Schumacher had a bit of an issue on the first day with it. But definitely in the second and third day, he was, putting in the laps, flying around, and yeah, it looked like a good car, and but we know they're probably not going to be anywhere near the top this year. And obviously all their focus is on next year, so it'll be interesting to know what you guys have to say about that. And as for Williams, I'll mention them as well. Obviously they had three different drivers on 3 different days, so obviously Latifi and Russell not getting quite as much time in the car as others. However, I thought the Williams looked quite good. 373 laps. We saw Latifi spin, flat spot his tyre quite badly.
Yeah.
I mean, it looked like they had a couple of problems with the balance of the car. But again, it'll be another team that will be interesting to see how far they've come. George, I know, has been very sort of positive about the car. Saying they've made some steps forward this year, but how many steps forward we just don't know. But it'll be interesting to see how they do across the year, and get your guys' thoughts.
I think Haas. I think Haas are in a lot of trouble. I think Williams have made the steps forward that they definitely, have wanted to do. They've definitely taken the steps forward that I think they've needed to take if they wanted to get closer. And I think that they'll beat Haas. I think Haas are in a really tricky situation. Nikita and Mick both looked pretty comfortable. I think they didn't look like they were struggling. But I just don't think that car is enough because Williams looked and obviously we saw Latifi spin because of understeer. But I think that for me, I think these spins are down to the conditions rather than the cars. It was pretty windy, wind changing 100 degrees, 108 literally spins like 1 minute it's the left and then the right, and I just think that just catches teams out when they're doing their push laps. But I think Williams have taken the steps in the right direction. Who knows where that means? Who knows whether they'll score points? But for sure, going forward, I think it's definitely positive for them.
I mean, just quickly, Matt, that has to be their ultimate goal, right, this season for Williams. Before you say your view, the ultimate goal for Williams here is to try and get some points on the board this year. Surely, just get up there, try and beat Haas at least, and obviously probably try and get close to Alfa Romeo, and probably Ferrari, AlphaTauri just above them.
I mean, I guess Williams were in quite a few positions last season to get some points. But ultimately they didn't get them. However, if they have made steps forward this year with their car, it's all relative. So if all the other teams have made a step forward, then is the step forward that Williams took gonna push their performance above their competitors, their direct competitors, Haas and Alfa Romeo? That's the real question.
Very good point.
So I hope they can fight for some points. I mean, get back to the old Williams would be a push, but to score some points would be a good memento for them.
Even if it's just one, it's something. So it'll give them that boost to be a little bit more motivated and push for some more for the next seasons. But I think what's good for Williams is that if they can get points this year, and with the completely new regulations next year, I think it could be looking good for Williams.
So I saw something in the week that was talking about George. Probably at the moment in the worst situation he is possible in Formula One. Because he wants to see a Mercedes, but do you think that in the back of George's mind, Lewis signing on for 2022, I think is starting to look more and more likely for me because I think he'll want to tackle these regulations. Do you think that if he doesn't, do you think in the back of his mind that he's thinking, Williams have taken good steps this year. If I, stick with them, it might end up being one of the best decisions of my career because they could go on, to dominate. Or do you think it is a case of I want to perform this year and get the Mercedes seat?
I think realistically, Williams need George. George has run the Williams for few years now,
Yeah.
and he's done incredibly well, and he's pushing Williams closer and closer to the points and up the constructors.
Mm.
So it's hard, really. George has got a tough decision to make, whether or not he wants to try and get that Mercedes seat, or whether he stays at Williams and continues to do what he's doing best and driving that car.
Do you think the longer that the Mercedes seats aren't filled up, the longer that maybe he isn't promised the seat, that he will just end up going, I can't wait any longer, I'm going to stick with Williams, in which case that forces Mercedes to is to give in to whatever Lewis is demanding, whether the contract negotiations go that way, or do you think it is the case of that George will happily wait for that seat, or will he be forced because of the period of time? Because as a driver, you don't want to be sat there thinking about your future, thinking about what you're going to be doing in the middle of a season. So, do you think that because of the situation that we're in, we've got a lot of races this year, a lot of different logistics going into it. Do you think that George could be forced into making a decision, staying at Williams if the negotiations between Lewis, Valtteri, and Toto go on for a long period of time?
I think it depends ultimately on how Mercedes perform this season, right? Like, I think if Red Bull challenged them, potentially even beat them, I don't think Lewis will be going anywhere. I think he'll want to get Mercedes up there again next year, especially with the new regulations. And whether or not that's another 1 year deal or a 2 year deal, even maybe, who knows. But ultimately, it depends how the two drivers perform and how Mercedes perform. I think ultimately for me, there's no doubt in my mind George wants the Mercedes seat. I think it's the seat every driver would want, especially in recent years. I think him being in and around Mercedes, obviously last year, he's already got that little bit of experience with them, and he'll want to continue what they're doing, carry on, either bring them back to the top, say if Red Bull beat them, or he'll want to, he will just want to be in the best car possible. But either way, it's not a bad decision for him because if Williams are making them steps forward, and there were reports this week that Williams, are set to, and they think they can do a McLaren and get back up there. But, like I say, ultimately I think he's gonna keep them seats. Try and go for that Mercedes seat, sorry.
Okay. Shall we do some questions?
Well, yeah, there's a couple of questions that people have asked.
Yeah.
So,
starting off with is, do we think Stroll will challenge and perhaps beat Vettel?
I'm going to go with yes. Partly because I think that Seb, although I think he's looked good, although I think he's looking young, and we all said at the opening of the reveal of Aston Martin that they look good. Seb looks good. He looks young. He looks sort of refreshed. But I think Stroll is good. I don't understand why a lot of people hate on him. I know.
Well, he didn't get that turkey pole for nothing.
Exactly. He beat Perez.
Yeah.
I don't think necessarily that he'll beat Seb, because I think Seb is the 4-time world champion. He has nearly 60 race wins. So he's not going to go down easy without a fight. But I think Stroll will be closer than a lot of people are putting him at the moment.
I mean, with the question, he can definitely challenge Vettel, that's for sure. I mean,
Yeah,
he's in a Formula 1 seat, and, he's had to challenge, and, last season he was very strong. So, he can definitely challenge him. As Luke said, beat Vettel could be a bit of a long shot, but I think, again, it comes down to how fast Vettel can get comfortable in Aston Martin. Stroll has been there for the past few years now, so he's going to be a lot more comfortable than Vettel is, and obviously just after this testing, Vettel hasn't had much running time, so he could struggle in them early races. Stroll could ultimately go and beat him and, end up beating him across the season. So there's definitely potential there for Stroll to beat Vettel. But as you say, a 4-time world champion and, with the caliber that Vettel's got, he definitely won't go down, without a fight, as Luke said, for sure.
I'm going to have to sort of disagree. I think...
Ooh.
Go for it.
Well, Stroll, he's a good driver. He got pole in Turkey, whatever. He's not consistent enough. And
Agreed,
I think someone like Sebastian Vettel was a 4-time world champion. He was consistent for 4 years, and he won the championship in those 4 years. So I think Stroll could beat him on certain occasions, sure, but over an entire season, I don't think Vettel was going to be challenged that hard by Stroll.
Sure.
But we'll see.
Okay, moving on to the next question then. It's from Callum11. And nice simple question, is your favourite liveries for 2021? For me, I think my favourite after seeing the cars out on track for the first time is, I think, Alpine. I thought the Alpine looked really nice. I love the blue, the white and the red. I think it's a really nice livery. Obviously different to their winter livery that they had, but yeah, I thought the Alpine looks really nice, and I know it's not there, but probably a close second, Aston Martin.
Yeah, definitely. I liked the Mercedes car, grew on me. The AMG Petronas car grew on me, definitely. I think it looked nice under the lights. I really like Alpine. But mine is Aston Martin. I just think that car under the lights just looks phenomenal. The green looks stand out. I think it looks phenomenal. I think all of them look really good. I think under the lights of Bahrain, I think they do look very good. Yeah, for sure. They all look lovely.
Yeah, I mean, I think, they all look pretty good. If I had to choose them, it'd be the Aston Martin. However, it would look better without the pink and with the classic Aston Martin lime green. But wishes will be wishes. The Aston Martin definitely looks the best in my opinion. The British Racing Green. And actually, I kind of like the McLaren. It's not too different from last year. But, I mean, they've made some small improvements. It does look a little bit better. Ultimately, that's not what they're focusing on, but...
Well, yeah.
Still looks a little bit better than last year, I think.
I think my favourite has to be the Alfa Romeo. I really like the sort of inverted colours from last season. It just looks super clean. But another one that could potentially be up there is AlphaTauri. They've changed it up with the white rims, and it could look. Yeah. It's something different. We haven't seen it before, so think it could run.
Agreed.
Matty, what's yours? What's your favourite livery?
I said Alpine, and then Aston Martin. Shame we didn't get to see more of the Aston Martin, as that was again I think a lot of people's favourites. Shame we didn't get to see a bit more of it out on track. But yeah, moving on to the next one. Matty Sharp. Could and can Red Bull challenge Mercedes?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, of course. They had a good testing. They've got a good car. They've got a good package for this year. I don't think it's difficult to say for me personally. I think the Mercedes car that we're seeing isn't the car we're going to be seeing in a few days. But I think they can challenge. Will they beat them? For me personally, no. I don't think they can beat them, because I just think Mercedes are not 7 championships in a row for no reason. But for sure, there is no real reason in my mind why Red Bull, Verstappen, and Perez can not give this championship a go.
I think Red Bull are going to get closer to Mercedes, but I don't think they're going to beat them. I think the championship will go on for longer. We won't find out the winner until a little bit later in the season, I don't think. But don't think they're going to beat them this season.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to think that they'd beat them. just to spice it up a bit. Realistically, is it going to happen? Probably not, but they'll definitely be a lot closer.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody would like to see, Verstappen and Lewis go wheel to wheel, have nice battles on track, but I think, realistically thinking about things logically, I can't see too much of a battle. I do think that Mercedes is still a long way in front.
I mean, what we do know is if there's any team to challenge Mercedes, it's Red Bull, right? That's just a
Yeah.
given. Any team
But I
this
think-
year, it's going to be Red Bull. And after testing, I think a lot of people say that Red Bull will challenge Mercedes this year, but until we get to that first race, and potentially even further into the season, again, the first race, you'll get a rough idea, but until we start seeing how really reliable the cars are, and how
Further
they get
into
on,
their engine life.
we won't know. But like I say, team to challenge Mercedes, we definitely know will be Red Bull. So yeah.
100%.
So, Spud asks, will Ocon beat Alonso this season?
Interesting one.
I think it's too hard to tell at the moment with those two. I think they're pretty close. In terms of, I think Ocon is pretty good, and I think Alonso has adjusted pretty well. But I do think that it will be something that we develop over the period of time that we see in the teams. But who knows? Who knows? I think it's definitely a battle that I'm looking forward to. Whether Alonso still has the motivation and the power to continue on for a whole season. Yeah, I think it will be interesting.
I think it's going to be close between them two. Don't necessarily know who's going to beat who, but yeah. Not.
Yeah, I mean, do you mind if I go, Matt?
Yeah, go.
Ocon's performance against Ricardo last season. Sorry. Ocon's performance against Ricardo last season at Renault really wasn't that strong. But if you look at his performance back in 2018 at Force India, he was actually pretty strong against Perez. And, I think he can compete against Alonso, but it's just whether he finds that performance within the car and finds it within himself this season, because he has the potential. He just isn't using it at the moment.
Again, I think it's another Stroll Vettel type situation between the two of them.
Yeah.
I think Alonso's obviously come back in, looked like he was really good at testing, and looked like he hadn't been out of the sport for that long.
Yeah, definitely.
But will Ocon beat him across the season? Who knows? But after last season, had a very strong season last year, so he definitely could beat Alonso. But it's how comfortable Alonso could get in that car, how quick he can get up there and get the points in.
Yeah, 100%. I think that will a battle that obviously I'm looking forward to over the next few weeks and next few months of racing.
Okay then, so our last question for tonight then is again from Spud, and it's the dark horse of the season. For me, I'm going to start. I think we saw it in testing, but for me, I think the dark horse is AlphaTauri. Maybe not in the sense of it, they're the dark horse, obviously go and win a championship, but the team that might have made the most gains in this off season, and the team that could make the biggest jump up the constructors. I thought they were very strong. I think they've got two very good drivers there in Gasly and Tsunoda. I absolutely love Tsunoda. I think he's an unbelievable driver, and I think there'll be good things to come for him later on in his career. So yeah, for me, dark horse would probably be AlphaTauri.
I mean, I think I would agree as well. I think AlphaTauri. I think they'll definitely be challenging more than a lot of people are suggesting. I think that they'll challenge a lot more not for race wins, maybe for a few podiums, but I think Yuki looks really strong, and Gasly is obviously Gasly that we know. And I think if that Honda engine and the way that these cars work at the moment, the way that the field's a little bit more closed up, I definitely think that they can 100% challenge. And who knows where they'll go, but I'm sure that they'll have a pretty good season.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with AlphaTauri, but I also think Alpine aren't a team to be mistaken for this season. They've been looking pretty strong so far. And the Renault car last year wasn't actually that bad either. They scored them a couple podiums. So yeah, I think AlphaTauri, Alpine, see where they come. They're looking good at the moment.
Well, with my dark horse, when I was reading the question, I picked a driver as the dark horse rather than a team. And I think Yuki Tsunoda could be the dark horse of the season. He had an exceptional rookie year in F2. He was in F2 for 1 year and got into F1, and he has been super strong. He's put in the effort to understand the car, everything. He had a great, what seemed to be a great testing, so he could be up there this season.
I would agree. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that, and would probably agree with all your choices as well. But anyway, I think that'll end our episode 2 of F1 Talk. Want to thank you guys for coming along and joining us for the hour that we've been live. If you did miss any of it and want to go back and rewatch any of it, it will be uploaded to YouTube. Make sure you go follow all of our socials as well, TikTok, Twitter, and everything like that. We probably will be back next week. We'll probably be doing some open lobbies on F1, probably on PC. So if you guys would like to join us, then for sure we'll try and get some of you guys involved. Make sure you come over, join our Discord as well. You do that by typing !Discord in the chat. There'll also be new questions up as well for the Bahrain Grand Prix for the F1 Talk episode we do after that. But anyway, for now, I want to thank you guys for coming along. Thank you for watching, and we will see you all very soon.
Bye.